All right, well, sorry, I'm a black screen. Maybe it'll get figured out.
I'm afraid I'm.
Did we want to get started?
Yes, please, let's get started. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm a black screen. This is Andrea talking. I'm not sure why that's happening, but I can see all you. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, let's get started. Ainsley, I know we have two main items on our agenda today. You created this, so there's something else we should talk about regarding the recommendation process. I'm going to hand that to you. Do we need to approve minutes from last time?
No, I don't have those.
Okay, so we won't do that. Okay, do you want to start with the first item before we get started? And I know we have some guests today, so you let me know if we have enough time to do introductions or anything like that. I'm not sure of the timing.
I think we might want to save most of the time just for the presenters to introduce themselves. And we got quite a few people on the call, and I really want to hear from them. So maybe we'll just hear from the presenters.
Okay, great. Should we jump straight to that and skip number one?
So I'll go over.
Or do you want to do that at the end?
Really fast. I'll do it really fast.
Okay.
So I just want everybody to be aware of like where we are in the process. So we've been hearing a lot about like best practices when it comes to higher education and prison programs, and we have some great presenters today who are going to tell us some more about what their states are doing. So in the next couple of months, Dr. Cantora has put together some really good recommendations for this work group. So the goal for next meeting is to, if anybody else has any recommendations they'd like to submit, feel free to email me and or Dr. Cantora, and we can put those recommendations up there. Next meeting, we're going to discuss these recommendations and approve them. And then the meeting after that, there's already some descriptions of these issues written up, but we'll, discuss the descriptions of the issues, approve those so they can be in the annual report. So next two meetings are going to be focused on recommendations. And we also have one more state presenting next meeting. So if you have any recommendations, please email me. But these are the recommendations that we have so far from wonderful Dr. Cantora. So I will turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so let's get started. We have guests from New York and Virginia with us today. We've been spending a lot of time talking about what state coalitions could look like for Maryland. And there's a lot of great ones across the country, and we're really happy to have two with us today to share how they formed and how they operate, and hopefully we can gain a lot of insight. So thank you all for being with us. First up, we have the State University of New York, New York's Higher Education Office, which is really exciting. I think maybe you're the only office that kind of operates under a state system in the country. Perhaps I'm wrong, but we're excited to hear from you, Rachel and Casey. So I'll just turn it to you. And again, really sorry I'm on black screen today.
Thanks so much, Andrea. It's great to be with you guys today and see some familiar faces. We did prepare some slides just that we thought would be helpful to organize some information. So I'll share my screen, but then we're hoping that we can have a little bit of time for questions and discussion. We really want this to be meaningful to all of you. And again, are excited to be learning from you too, and around what's happening in Maryland. So I'll start sharing and then we can give a little bit more formal introductions, Casey and myself. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. And if I just view slideshow, you can see what's going on.
Yes.
Okay, great. I can't see any of you now. So Great. So I'm Rachel Sander. I'm the Executive Director of SUNY's Office of Higher Education and Prison. This is an office that is, I think, somewhat nationally unique, but I hope not for long. Our office is embedded within the SUNY system. I work in Albany in our SUNY System Administration building, and I'm here today with my colleague, Dr. Casey O'Brien. Casey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Casey O'Brien, Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Success and Transformational Initiatives here at SUNY System. I'll be talking with you in just a few slides, but excited to be here and talk more about our work.
Thanks, Casey. So this is now our team. The Office of Higher Ed and Prison has grown quite a bit. I actually make 5 years at SUNY next week, and I can talk a little bit about the evolution of the office. It wasn't always an office. When I came to SUNY, it was a research project within the provost office, and I was consulting. I then, once I was consulting after 6 months, saw a real opportunity for SUNY to play a bigger role in the higher ed and prison space, and ended up creating a full-time director role for myself 5 years ago. And really, the work has taken off in the past 5 years for a variety of reasons, one of which I know Casey's going to speak to, the leadership of Chancellor John King, who came to SUNY at the right moment when Pell was coming back. I often joke in my personal life, I felt like, I was happy to be at SUNY, but the work was moving slow, the pace of higher ed. I decided to have children. And then that very, very winter, Pell Grants came back for all people in prison, and John King came to SUNY, and my life got quite exciting. So this is now the team. We have our hiring now for 3 new openings.
Hey,
And
Rachel?
Yes.
Sorry, it doesn't look like the slides are advancing. I don't know if anyone else is still seeing the first one.
Oh, great. Sorry about that. So how about there? Can you
there
see
we
that?
go. Yeah.
I'll just not be in presenter mode. So the team has grown quite a bit. So our hope today, just quickly, is we want to give you a little bit of background about SUNY and context about the SUNY system, provide sort of an overview of higher ed and prison in New York, talk a little bit about our academic reentry work, which is sort of the newest arm of what we're doing at SUNY OHEP, and then leave some time for questions and discussion. So I'll pass to Casey to share a little bit more about, sorry, there's a slide thing here, about the SUNY system.
Sure. Okay, great. So before I go deeper into kind of SUNY's work in higher education and prison, I just want to pause and give some context about SUNY as a system, because I know many of you from outside New York State. So SUNY, the State University of New York, is the largest comprehensive public university system in the country. We have a total of 64 campuses, all under one umbrella. This includes community colleges, technology colleges, which offer both associate and bachelor's degree programs, comprehensive colleges, and our research universities. What makes us distinctive is not only that scale, but also the fact that we really are coordinated as one system, not just a collection of independent institutions. So as Rachel indicated, we're led by our Chancellor, John King, who, when he arrived, set out 4 guiding pillars for SUNY: student success, research and scholarship, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and economic development and upward mobility. Every initiative across our 64 campuses connects back to those pillars. And I'll note here too that before I came to SUNY System, I served as Dean of Academic Affairs at a small rural community college that had a very robust higher education and prison program. That experience really gave me a firsthand look at how transformative this work can be, not just for the students on the inside, but also for the faculty who teach there and for the campus community to really come together to support the work. So it showed me too that these programs are deeply tied to SUNY's broader mission of access and equity. So looking at this slide here, the Office of Student Success, one of the real advantages we have in New York is that SUNY can approach higher education and prison. States, its work might be coordinated institution by institution, but because SUNY is unified, we can take what works on one campus, we can replicate it, we can scale it, and ensure consistency and quality across all of our facilities. And that's where Rachel's office, the Office of Higher Ed and Prison, really comes in. The Chancellor, when he arrived, made an important decision to house the Office of Higher Ed and Prison within our broader Office of Student Success. And that decision was not just symbolic, it was a deliberate signal that incarcerated students are just as much a part of our vision of who SUNY serves. Their success matters just as much as the success of any other student in our system. And this alignment also, to me, makes practical sense. Students in prison are really transfer students or soon to be transfer students, because we know that 95% of those in prison are eventually coming home. And when they return into the community, we want to do everything we possibly can to support them in the reentry process, give them the tools that they need to continue their studies. So by embedding this work within our Office of Student Success, we ensure that the supports and the policies that guide transfer, retention, completion, all apply equally to this student population as well. So in practice, this really means that the same office coordinating higher ed in prison is also advancing initiatives like the replication of ASAP ACE and our soon to be launched academic momentum campaign. It keeps the work from being siloed, and it reinforces that SUNY's commitment to equity and completion is comprehensive. That includes those who begin their college journeys inside correctional facilities. So I'll just add to this that this is also a bit of a cultural signal inside SUNY. So when presidents, provosts, and faculty see higher ed in prison positioned alongside enrollment management, advising, transfer, it legitimizes the work too. It tells the whole system this is core student success work, not just a side project. And that's a unique advantage of being in a coordinated system like SUNY. So with that background and context about where higher ed in prison fits into the overall SUNY picture, turn it back over to you, Rachel, to dive a little bit more deeply into your work.
Casey. So just for some background, I won't go too in the weeds with this. I don't know if you guys can even see this graphic, so I'll just talk through it kind of high level. Basically, I mentioned that when I first came to SUNY, one of the things we did was build out a research project to look at higher ed in prison in New York State and SUNY. And of course, SUNY, I should mention right off the beginning, is not the only provider of higher ed in prison in New York State, but we are now the largest provider. And we looked through some records and found evidence of SUNY being engaged in higher ed and prison work as early as 1970. In 1971 was the Attica Uprising, and one of the demands that came out of Attica was a request for more college programming. One of our community colleges proximal to Attica launched a degree granting program there just 2 years after the uprising. And in the mid 70s, we can tell that about half of the programs, 9 out of 17, in New York State were run by SUNY schools. Of course, we all in the higher ed and prison field know what happened in the 1990s, early 1990s. By 1994, the crime bill made it so that people in prison were banned from receiving financial aid. Federal and New York State followed that suit with TAP funding, our statewide system for funding stream for higher education. So in New York, I think it's really important to recognize and pay homage to the women of Bedford Hills, which is the women's maximum security prison here in New York State. I actually was privileged to have my first job in higher ed and prison at Bedford Hills, and some of the women who brought college and prison back after the elimination of Pell were still there, and my early teachers in this work. I say this because it's important kind of cultural context, I think, for like how SUNY was able to be successful a decade later, 2 decades later. In 1997, the women of Bedford Hills met with their correctional facility superintendent and with local advocates in their community to bring a college program back without public dollars. And for many years, the opportunity within New York State was at the hands of private colleges who took this work on as charity work. And that was extremely valuable and meaningful to women, to all people in prison who had been abandoned by schools mid-degree. And then in the 2010s, we start seeing some reemergence of SUNY back in the picture. Some partnerships happening with private universities or community nonprofits who are looking for a community college to grant the degree. Second Chance Pell, of course, put SUNY back on the map and the ability for us to re-engage in the higher ed and prison space. Shortly after full Pell was back, TAP followed suit in New York State as well. So we see Pell and TAP that are back, and again, really changing the opportunity for SUNY to stay involved. And around this time, Chancellor King came, SUNY hired a full-time director for this work, and our work has really kind of taken off. So just want to give that context. This all did not happen quickly. And this is a slide, I'm going to speak a little bit about our data work, but I just want to share that this is some of the participation and outcomes that we see in our SUNY programs, just a sense to show how programming has grown. Again, this goes back to 2015. So in the past 10 years, you can see that enrollment is growing inside our prison programs. The dip there is COVID, which again, in New York State, decimated, really significantly impacted our programming there. All programming in New York State correctional facilities is done in person. We have no online learning or tablet education. This is all in-person programming. So we serve about 700 to 800 students a semester right now. And just wanted to give that high level kind of overview of our growth. The other visual that I think is important to think about in New York State is this is a map of the state and where our higher ed and prison programs are or will soon be. I'll just share this in terms of the context. I don't presume to know it for Maryland, but I imagine there's a Maryland equivalent. In the early 90s, it was most people in prison were from New York City. And we had a population in the early 90s of about 90,000 people who were incarcerated in New York State. And since the early 90s, that has really shifted. Our population is down to 30,000 inside correctional facilities in New York State. Most of the prisons in New York State are sort of, as you can see, sort of the western side of the state and the northern side part of the state. There are a few prisons downstate. Historically in New York State, most of those private colleges that ran programs pre-Pell coming back were all proximal to New York City. So again, a lot of opportunity in New York State for the past 2 decades depended on what prison you were near and if that prison was close to New York City. Since most of the prisons in New York State are not anywhere near the city, it meant that opportunity was really limited. New York right now, as today, has 42 state prisons. I should say that it's worth noting SUNY does have a presence in one federal facility, several county jails, and several youth facilities. But this data work that we've done has largely been around the state prison system and aligning opportunity for people in state custody. This is another graphic that I just wanted to share that shows how much work we have to do, even though, you know, we've come so far. Like, there are about 30,000 people incarcerated, and a very small percentage of them are actually enrolled in college, and then smaller even enrolled in SUNY schools. So the eligibility criteria we're using is Department of Corrections. And so, you know, again, just showing that there is a big reach here that we could be, that we're working on filling, I guess. I want to give some context to what my office does. So one of the things we saw a need for early on that we started doing is providing technical assistance to campuses and financial support to campuses that are building programs. So because of our positionality within the state university system office, we're here in Albany, and we have a deep relationship and tie to Department of Corrections central office. And we would talk with them about which correctional facilities were missing programs, needed programs, and where we could kind of do some matchmaking with the local community college or SUNY school. As Casey mentioned, we have 64 campuses across the state. So there is a SUNY campus near every prison. And so thinking about how we could prepare those institutions to go into those spaces is a lot of where our efforts began. Again, the financial component here is that we've been able to provide some what we call equity fund dollars to close equity gaps in the student experience to these campuses. And this has resulted in program staffing costs being our office helping with program staffing costs, some infrastructure around computer labs or kind of other student support interventions, workshops, materials that campuses were struggling to provide in the startup and launch of these programs. I mentioned our research. I think that's a really important element too. You know, some of what we initially tried to accomplish was find out who's doing what within the SUNY system and look at participation outcomes the way we do for other academic students. I mean, again, that we're not looking here, SUNY is not looking at necessarily corrections outcomes. We're looking at completion, retention, how our students are faring, what student success means behind the wall. I alluded to before this reentry navigation work that we've taken on, and this is really a statewide approach to academic reentry. In New York State, most people are incarcerated in a prison that's quite far from where they're actually returning home to. And so the fact that SUNY Potsdam might be working with a student, which is near the Canadian border, who's heading home to Long Island, we wanted to make sure that there was a statewide infrastructure of reentry navigators focused on academic reentry navigators there to meet people both while they're in the prison and when they're coming home. And then we do a lot of statewide and national community building to bring people together to talk about this work. And we have this larger goal of changing hearts and minds about who's in prison and why, and doing some advocacy to broaden people's understanding about our students and about their realities. I think the last thing I have here is really just talking about this academic reentry work that we have, this idea that we're trying to provide specific supports to people given their unique needs. We use a trauma-informed holistic navigation model. What this means is that we go into the facilities and meet with students 6 months prior to their release. The college program, the campus program can notify us when somebody's getting ready to go home. If they're in the community already, students can also reach out to us and request a meeting with us. And we help them map out sort of their academic needs, their non-academic needs, and support them in an ongoing way during their reentry. We work with students for a minimum of 1 year when they come home. And part of that process involves in identifying sort of the connections and referrals they need that are beyond SUNY's capacity. But again, this idea that SUNY Potsdam, if they have a student who's heading home to Long Island, we can help support his transfer to SUNY Old Westbury in a seamless way, as opposed to asking the student to do that himself or wait till he comes out and then reapply. We just find that if there's not that continuity in the relationship, there's the chances go down that the student is actually going to re-enroll. So I'm going to stop there because I feel like that was a lot of information, and I'm happy to take questions or go deeper on something.
Thank you, Rachel and Casey. I'm hoping you'll share that PowerPoint with us. Thank you. Yeah, no, there's a lot of amazing information. I have questions, but I'm going to let other people ask first.
Hi, Rachel. This is Zakia from the University System of Maryland. How are you?
Good to see you again. Good. How are you?
Sorry, I'm not on camera, but good to see you. Excuse me if I missed it. How many people are in your office? You are a team of what?
So today it's 9 and we have 3 vacancies, so it'll soon be 12.
Great, thank you.
Other questions, feel free to just come off mute and ask. Ainsley, go ahead.
I have a question about if your office was involved at all in getting the tuition assistance back in the state of New York.
Our office did not do a lot of direct advocacy about that, but certainly other college providers in New York State were instrumental in doing that. To me, you know, again, years of work, obviously, but I think it happened right also after the federal ban was lifted, that it made it easy, paved the way for New York to follow suit, I think, is my hot take.
Thank you.
The other thing I feel like I didn't do a great job of explaining that I should have is that one of the roles our office does is bring together sort of the SUNY community of practice. So we have 16 campuses working in 24 prisons right now, and our office is a convener of those campuses. So we hold monthly calls, we do some data collection with them pre-semester. We help organize that data for Department of Corrections. We hold like an annual in-person convening. This year, it's around teaching in prison. We're combining it with sort of a faculty-focused event as well. It's going to be a 3-day convening this year. So we also run some Center for Professional Development courses for faculty training and prepping people to go in. So just want to also make sure I say that. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi. I may have missed this in your presentation because my internet's been very spotty. But who funds your office? Is it strictly SUNY, or do you get state support in this effort at all?
So Casey, do you want to speak to this?
Sure. So the State University of New York does provide a small amount, but a large portion of the Office of Higher Ed in Prison is funded by external grants. There's a number of grants that support this work. But also more and more each year, we're starting to onboard more of the ledger from the Office of Higher Education in Prison onto state line, particularly personnel as Rachel's team continues to expand. But it is primarily at this moment grant funded. but there's a number of state resources that just being a part of the SUNY system, though it might not take the form financially, just the support of the building and the system and the employees here really do provide that support.
Right. Thank you.
Be remiss if I didn't say that, again, I think part of my job is to get public dollars to replace private dollars. So, again, we were able to launch because we had private money, and now it's like this journey to bring it more into the fold of what we're doing, and we're doing it. Like we see increased commitment from SUNY across the board every year.
Thank you. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about the matchmaking that you highlighted between, I guess, SUNY and CUNY or the other community colleges in the state and how that works?
Yeah, so CUNY, actually, the City University of New York system, there are no prisons near CUNY, honestly, because they're all in New York City and there's no New York City prisons anymore. So the closest prison to a CUNY school is still about a 2-hour drive. And so CUNY does have a presence in one facility that is sort of that 2-hour drive. But I will say that CUNY is really has been the leader historically in New York around reentry. And New York City, in terms of reentry, is so resource rich. So we do a lot of learning from CUNY around what works around reentry and getting people back into the CUNY system. However, as you guys probably know, translating sort of inner city resources to rural areas is really the challenge. So our data shows that now the majority of folks are not returning to New York City. Our data shows most of our students are returning north and west in New York. And most of them are going to rural areas. And so issues like public transportation and just in general, like community resources, mental health supports, it's just different. And so one of the reasons our navigators are based in these regions to develop a robust kind of network of the social services and supports in that region, so that when students return, we're there on the ground to support the students through accessing those resources. Because again, theoretically, right, SUNY is statewide. We have these schools everywhere. Some of our schools, I'll just be honest, are more ready than others to support students in reentry or go inside. But I think for me, it's always been around the geography, literally the map, like start with the map and who is closest to the prison. I am a firm believer that, again, programming needs to be in person. Part of this education is socialization. And again, developing the deep relationships we do inside these programs set people up for success in the long run. I will also say I'm a big advocate of hybrid instruction, and I'm a big trying to push our DOC to allow for some more remote instruction to happen, because again, we have 30,000 people in prison, 1,000 enrolled in college. We're running out of space in some of these facilities, and we need to have some online opportunity to ensure that people fully have access to what SUNY can do, set them up for success in terms of digital literacy when they come home. But again, I will say that before Chancellor King came, it was a lot of like convincing to some of these campuses. It kind of used to be that our office would be approached by some, and again, a passionate faculty member who'd say, like, I really want to start this program. And we'd then have to work to convince leadership at the school that this was worth taking on. And since Chancellor has come, he's talking to the presidents about this at the president's meeting. He's asking them, like, will you fulfill my mission and serve your system by running a program? And as Casey said, that culturally has been such a shift, because now I have presidents like knocking at my door being like, how do I start a program? And I'm like, all right, there's 4 campuses there. We need to like we're moving into this next phase. But and I think I'll just name this too. Again, I think in hindsight, one of the things that I wish we could, that I'm still hopeful about, is working with our private partners better too. I mean, I think that, again, New York is somewhat of the embarrassment of riches. Like, we have so many schools that are engaged in this education. We attempted early on when I first came to SUNY to kind of try to create transfer and articulations between public and private to ensure seamless kind of transfer throughout the system. That was not something that was possible with the private institutions participating. And so therefore, it kind of furthered the need for why there needs to be a New York option, a SUNY option in every prison. Because again, if you're kind of not, if you're only taking a few transfer credits, and if you have sort of an elite pedagogy that you're refusing to kind of iterate on, and taking only 20 students a year, it's just not accessible to the bulk of the people in prison. And so there are some prisons where there's a private college program and a SUNY college program. And my philosophy is until everybody in the prison can go to school that wants to, we're all still needed.
Thank you. Were there other hands or other questions?
I guess I could just ask, following up on what you just said, what proportion of people, of the 30,000 people in New York prisons, do you think are interested, or would you hope to reach, or either of those or both?
So I think corrections says that about 60% of those people are technically eligible from the Department of Corrections standpoint. In terms of what, then if we whittle it down to like interest and availability to complete some semesters, because again, some people are going home relatively soon. I think it's less than that, but I think that easily we could serve another 8,000, 9,000 more. Like, I mean, I think I'd be happy if we got to a third of the population. I mean, 10% of the population enrolled.
And now you're serving how many? I missed.
1,000. We serve 1,000 incarcerated
Yeah.
students a year.
And is there a lot of continuity, that it's the same 1,000 that keep on through the system, or?
I will say that our medium correctional facilities, we have a ton of turnover, but you know, again, the maximum security facilities, I mean, we've added, most of our programs started out as associates. We're now adding all these BA programs because so many people are completing the associates and looking for that next step. We have men writing to us for master's programs as well. It's worth noting, I think too, in New York State, that there are 2 master's programs inside correctional facilities, actually maybe 3 now. 2 of those programs are, none of those are run by SUNY right now, but 2 of those programs are theology degrees, master's degrees. And so there is a need and an interest in master's level work inside the
Are
correctional
those
facilities.
master programs paid
Thanks.
for, like, with private funds? Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions? I know we have another group here to present.
The last thing I guess I just want to say, parting words are, I think another important thing to think about and or that I'm excited to learn about Maryland of is how you serve non-aid eligible students, because that is an ongoing challenge for us. Different campuses have different scholarship funds available. And I think that per sort of state law, we're not allowed to waive tuition because we are a state entity and there is no tuition waiver on the books here in New York. So that is a barrier to student participation. Like I said, some of our campuses have scholarship partners, scholarship funds, but it's still limited. And I think as we grow, as we think of online access, we have to think about what those pathways are for some of like the most vulnerable people in prison who aren't able to complete those FAFSAs. And excited to hear from you all too about your work on that. But
yeah,
excited to also
I
hear
could
Virginia
quickly
too.
just share how I think each college maybe does it differently. Goucher might do it similar to how we do it, but I don't want to speak for them. But the way University of Baltimore does it is we do have private funds for those who are not Pell eligible. So, and sometimes it just might be a student is in default for a period of time. So we'll, like, you know, get them through for maybe 2 or 3 semesters and then they become Pell eligible, or a young 22-year-old will eventually become 24. So we support them, and it's usually these temporary situations. We've had some students whose family make a lot of money pay for their tuition. That's happened a few times, but we do try to, you know, support those who are not Pell eligible, but it's a really small number.
Then that goes for all of our colleges. No, anyone who applies and it has the ability to be accepted, they will take and pay for the tuition if they are not Pell eligible by use of, like Andrew said, private funds endowment, college tuition waivers or lowering of tuition, that sort of thing. So anybody who applies and can get accepted, they do not turn away.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel and Casey. Really appreciate it, and always learning a lot from you guys. I know our system is different in terms of size of how many universities we have in our state, and lots of differences, but amazing things you guys are doing. So really appreciate the time. I'm sure we're going to follow up at some point, and because we'll have more questions as we maybe create something here in Maryland. So appreciate you both.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
And you're welcome to stay on. Or if you have other things happening, feel free to drop off. But we're excited to hear from Virginia, Ainsley. Are Virginia folks on here?
Yes, I believe we have Terry.
Oh,
with
Terry's
us.
with us. Yay. Hi, Terry.
Hey, Derry.
I think you're muted.
Okay, how's that? Okay, good deal. Thank you. So hello, Andrea, Danielle, other folks who are on. I have to say, what an act to follow. Here's in the HEP world, here's who you don't want to follow, SUNY. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Virginia and kind of what's happening here, how we're evolving. By way of introduction, the Virginia Consensus for Higher Education in Prison is not an organization, it's actually an initiative. It is, our home is here at the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We are the state's largest interfaith, faith-based advocacy organization. We're 40 years old. We work on a variety of issues. Criminal justice reform happens to be one of our signature issues. We carried the faith organizing part of the abolition of the death penalty in 2021, which is, we're the first state in the South to achieve that. We have a membership in our organization of about 750 congregations of all different stripes. Our database is about 20,000 people. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out talking about all of the kinds of work that we do. And I was hired in 2022 to be the liaison to higher education. And I think that when they hired me, they imagined me going to campuses and setting up a table in the CAF and inviting student activists to become involved in all of our many fabulous campaigns on affordable housing and worker justice and criminal justice reform and such. But the lady with the white hair is not probably your best person to position there. But my own background before I became a faith-based community organizer bunches of years ago, I was a psychology professor, and I was in the early days of service learning. So for me, this understanding of universities and colleges as engines of innovation in communities has always just really been part of my own fiber. So when I came on board at Virginia Interfaith, assigned this to build relationships with colleges and universities, I started reaching out, stumbled across our 4 community colleges that were doing second chance Pell programs, called them up and said, what are you doing? And they said, like, well, hey, why don't you come sit with us at our consortium meeting, which at the time was a gathering. It was a monthly gathering of about, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 people representing community colleges, mostly community colleges, maybe a 4-year person popped every now and again, and then people from Department of Corrections. And what I saw there, and I think that no one who works in this area will be surprised, was a chronic tension between the culture of higher education and the culture of corrections. And so this was, remember, pretty immediate post-COVID. And so all of the programs in Virginia shut down. We did not in Virginia make the pivot to remote instruction. And that was very frustrating for our folks in higher ed. And I think this is maybe important to point out, and some of the value that our perspective can lend to you. What we saw was that, at least in Virginia, the fabulous higher education folks who really wanted to do bigger and better things were not authorized by their institutions to be advocates for those things. So I wondered, why on earth didn't all those great professors like gather up together and approach that, right? You can tell I'm a community organizer, go together to the Department of Corrections and ask that they have technology access. And the answer is that not one of them is authorized to engage in negotiation with another state agency, even on behalf of their own programs. So there was really no effective voice on behalf of expanding and innovating in these programs for Virginians. And so we recognized an opportunity to really become a voice on behalf of Virginians, which is who we always understand ourselves to represent anyway, and start to introduce this idea of expanding higher education in prison in our Commonwealth. When we started, we had a few different concerns. One of them, of course, because we're a justice-oriented organization, was the presence of predatory players in the field. We were early on very worried that some for-profit universities and other prison vendor folks were going to maximize their own profit at the expense of the quality of the programs. And also we had some concern that perhaps our state universities would be cut out, that they would be short-circuited by more exploitive players. So because we're a public policy organization, what we really wanted to see was access to higher education for a much larger percentage of the incarcerated Virginians than had access to it then. Virginia has 45 state prisons. Depends on how you count them, of course. Some are work camps and some are this and that, but 45 is the number that we use. 23,000 people incarcerated. There were 4 second chance Pell schools. They were all community colleges. One of them exclusively provided CTE type programs and certificates. The others were academic transfer programs. So from day one of the issues that we had a concern with was scale. So I appreciated the question to Rachel about how many of the folks who are incarcerated in your state prisons and any other spots are academically eligible. In Virginia, the number is 67% of those incarcerated are academically eligible for college. What we don't know is, in terms of Pell eligibility, is how many of that 67%, which is north of 14,000 people, have already achieved the bachelor's degree, which would make them ineligible for Pell. We don't know that number. We'd love to know that number, but we don't currently. But what we certainly were clear about was that when you have a prison with 1,000 individuals there, and you have a college program with 40 people in it, that is inadequate. So the question of scale has always been important for us and how you achieve scale. And then the other thing that's important for us really is around modernization of delivery. We know that the Pell standards for substantive comparability really call for technology access in a way that every state is really trying to figure out for themselves. Virginia is not in the lead on that. Unfortunately, we're trying to get there. But so we saw these kinds of issues. We were concerned about how in Virginia to move this issue forward as a matter of public policy. Should higher education be part of the way that Virginia does prisoning? Right? If we're going to do so much prisoning, shouldn't higher education be a part of it as a question to the state? So we were facing a lack of awareness of higher education in prison. The state senator with the most prisons in his district had 6 prisons in his district and was completely unaware of the Pell reinstatement. So part of where we started was to build public awareness and at the same time build political will for college and prison. We identified 6 different sectors in the state that we thought had skin in the game, whether they knew it yet or not. So of course you've got higher ed, you've got corrections, you've got justice impacted folks, you've got businesses who are potential second chance employers, you've got economic development interests who are concerned about the workforce as an asset of the state. You've got governmental officials. This is a very popular bipartisan issue. And then you've got the faith community. Faith institutions are very often involved in prison ministries. They are also often the home congregation of families who have loved ones incarcerated. So we really set out to build relationships and identify champions in each of these 6 sectors, with the goal then of convening them around a coordinating table to make some of those strategic planning decisions about what are the important issues the challenges that we want to address, what are possible solutions. And so that's really where we are right now. And I actually find it interesting. I'm always a little bit intimidated when I come in a room behind somebody like SUNY, who is obviously, look, they're an institutional player. They have a lot of resources. They are expected to be in conversation on this topic. In Virginia, what I think is different, and I think it's actually important, is that our organization, which is creating, and literally we're community organizing to pull together the champions and to identify the kinds of issues that need to be addressed, and educating folks in Virginia by stealing all of the great models that we see in Maryland, Hello Trailers, and and Hello Technology, right? And bringing people from other states into Virginia so that we can learn from the folks who are ahead of us, because that's the field, right? Is some are a little bit ahead in this way and some are a little bit ahead in that way. But together, it's a very, very robust learning community. And so I think that's, just the fact that we were invited here today, I can think of other programs that will probably be 10 times more informative or models for Maryland. We actually think of you as way ahead of us. But I do think that there's something valuable in really thinking carefully about the citizenry of your state and and where among your citizens are there natural allies and champions for the expansion of higher education in prison. Because I don't like to often talk about, incarcerated people. I always talk about incarcerated Virginians, because I never want the folks that we are talking to otherize the people that we're working on behalf of. These are Virginians. These are people in our families. So I think that's an important piece. I would say, Ainsley, you asked about challenges and successes. One of the challenges is the non-obvious complexity of this work. It's very easy to say, do you think we should have college programs in prison? And people go like, yeah, well, that seems like a good idea. But the devil is truly in the details. The federal regulations for Pell, the higher education is profoundly complex as an institution, as is corrections, and getting those 2 things to marry up and meet all of the regulatory obligations of each of them. Oh, by the way, in a political context, I don't know about Maryland and New York. We're in an election year this year in Virginia. Yet complicated. So I think that has been something that we've really struggled with, is how do we educate the decision makers sufficiently so that they know how to make the best decisions. It's a challenge. I see Danielle has a hand up.
I was just going to say, Terry, you're so right. Like, each state has their, the good things and bad things, or things that they're ahead of other states with and things that they need support and help with. And I appreciate the comments, about Maryland. One of the things that I look up to SUNY and like Virginia is because of your consortiums. We have the University System of Maryland has kind of taken upon themselves to start the creation of one. But one of the things that we need support on is how to fund it, right? So that we can actually meet on a regular basis, do what we need to do. Like yeah, Lee is on the line. She's very active in this with the university system. And I think that's one thing that, yeah, we got the technology. Yeah, we got the other stuff going on for us, but that's that one piece that is that consortium creation. We've got our stakeholder committee and all that stuff, but it's the actual college consortium, right, for our prison education programs. It started, but we just need to figure out how can we keep it going and active. So any thoughts or how you guys got up and running and were able to continue keeping it up and running and with funding sources and that sort of thing would be appreciated. I think that's something the legislative commission would be interested in.
Sure. So for the first year of the work that my organization did in this kind of the research phase, we're an organization that is grant funded, but also private, personal and private donations. And my organization was willing to let me pursue this on kind of no one's dime, but the regular organization. So the exploratory phase was funded by our organization. We were able to finally hire an additional staff person and really turn things up when we received a planning grant from the Ascendium Foundation. So we are currently about a year and a half way through on a 2-year planning grant. And that has been essential for us to really obligate 2 full-time staff people and engage a number of consultants to host events where we could bring people from out of state and gather folks in Virginia to talk about to learn about different models and such.
Did you directly contact Ascendium like Molly or somebody?
I did.
Okay, so maybe that's what Zakia. Yeah. I've got contacts at Ascendium. Maybe that's what we need to do is just come up with a model and approach Molly Lasagna. She's actually told me that before, that if somebody comes with her with a good idea, that they'll fund it. So maybe that's something we got to put our heads together and, Andrea and Zakia and I, and come up with a game plan.
Yeah. And I maybe this is a little bit self-serving, but I would encourage you when you do that to really, in Virginia, we identified 6 sectors because we recognize how all the puzzle pieces go together. We actually knew that in Virginia, which is a very purple state, and that if we had the business community at the table talking about well, what kinds of workers do we need in Virginia to compete effectively with Maryland? Oh, by the way.
Yeah, I have all the data. We have a longitudinal data system that I have looked at all our post-secondary programs throughout the state and what labor sectors they fall into after graduation, and then what labor market sectors within the next 10 years will be the highest earning, that sort of thing. So we can definitely use that when we're looking at.
Yep. And to build the relationships with those businesses. Right. Because when you need state funding, ultimately, you need to think about who is going to have a loud voice on your behalf at the state legislature.
Yep.
And in Virginia, I imagine it's probably true in most states that the business community has a very, very strong voice. And were they to become very solid friends of higher education in prison, understanding their own self-interest in that, that's really gas in the tank.
Do you have ties with Commerce?
So we have Virginia Economic Development Partnership is our state economic development agency. Okay. We partnered with them in April on Second Chance Employment Month, and we did a flyer and they disseminated it. Because we really are still in the organizing phase, these are new relationships. And frankly, the business relationships are the hardest ones to get. But they're important because we know that folks need employment. So I think that's maybe the most challenging thing of all of this work. There's so many complete problem areas, like second chance employment is its own thing. And technology is its own thing.
Mm.
So
John, do you think somebody from the Workforce Development Board would be able to sit on the consortium that would help us with looking at, degree programs and employment for people coming out that are getting post-secondary degrees? Because that is one piece that we are missing, is that being able to get people, our population, hired that are coming out with 4-year bachelor degrees. They want to give them jobs like way below what their actual degree level is.
So considering the boards, I'll say they're close proximity to MHEC and IRCs and things like that. I think it makes sense that they would, but they don't report to labor. So I think that it would make sense to make that request of that commission. I mean, of the board. It makes sense to me. Yeah, I like the recommendation.
Yeah, the Virginia Chamber of Commerce is also someone that we have met with recently. We just did a big conference in July called Building Consensus, and it was all around second chance employment. And Jeff Korzenik, the author of Untapped Talent, came and talked about the economic urgency for the businesses to start to look at, in Virginia, it's 10,000 people returning a year. And we actually know which regions they're returning to. So we are starting to think about the analysis that we need of what kinds of jobs are in exactly those regions where our returners are, which industries and which businesses are there, and how do we help them to be part of a conversation. So the chamber is a different kind of business voice versus your economic development folks, but really they marry up because they have the same self-interest.
This is great. Thank you so much, Terry. Really appreciate it. We are getting close to 2, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time. But no, this is great. It's always great to hear from you and learn what's happening. And thank you to SUNY also. I know they had to leave, and a few others had to leave for meetings. But again, thank you so much. This has been great. We expect to have another group with us next month, and Ainsley will share out that info soon. So no major homework assignments for this group, just more learning from others around the country. So thank you all so much, and reach out if you have any questions. Thank you again, Terry.
Thanks for inviting me.
Have a good day, everybody.
Mm.